stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I'm Bradshaw. That would be the the Chickasaw native, the Chickasaw Hall of Famer. You got so many Hall of Fames, I don't even know how to introduce you. Oklahoma's favorite son. I'm so excited about this guest. I can't even introduce my own partner, Gerald Brisco, because he's done it all. One of the greatest characters in the history of the business, one of the best guys in the history of the business. He was a former captain of his football team, state wrestling champion, Royal Rumble, the first one. He was the winner, WWE Hall of Famer. Every Hall of Fame you can mention, he is in. He's beat cancer twice, and he beat up a home invader recently also as well, just to prove that he's not over the hill. He is our friend, Mr. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks very much, folks. John, Jay, good to see you guys. But you know, the first thing Hacksaw's got to do, brother, give a big ho!
Oh!
Kind of fires me up nowadays. Get some blood flowing, you know? I said, everybody should start the day off with a good ho.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry,
Yeah.
I was down in Arkansas, and I ran into Hacksaw, sat right by him and his lovely wife. I didn't realize it was his birthday. I didn't find out till later. I would have loved to have bought him dinner, but I didn't realize that till later. So it did save me some money. But I'm sitting by Hacksaw and his wife. Not only am I sitting by this Mid-South legend, one of the biggest stars in the history of Mid-South, in the old Mid-South territory, he'd just been on every news show beating up a home invader. He had a line of like 1,000 people. I'm like Virgil, sitting next to him, just sitting there by myself watching college football.
Well, that's your usual line there, brother.
That actually, to tell the truth, that is my usual line. Usually it's just Virgil. Virgil waits to get my autograph.
Virgil waiting to get your autograph.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, Jim, man, and JBL said, but what a pleasure it is to have you on there. You know, we've tried. You know, your schedule is so busy, man, and you beat up so many home invaders and all that stuff. So we finally got our opportunity to get on here. Hopefully, you don't JBL don't piss you off enough where you go over to Texas and slap the crap out of him for me. It'd be a personal favor if you did. No, but what a career you've had, man. And just take us back a little bit. You know, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, JBL said earlier, you know, three-star sport in high school: wrestling, football, basketball, and track and field, probably too, right? Probably four sports. And you excelled at all of them. But I take us a little bit through that high school career, and I know your aspiration was always to be a professional football player. But in the back of your mind, had you watched any wrestling, professional wrestling, had any thoughts about that growing up?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll tell you, up in Glens Falls, I'm from a small little town, upstate New York. You know, about 200 miles north of New York City. And you hear in wrestling all these horror stories where guys grew up in these horror situations. I tell folks, I grew up in Mayberry. My dad was chief of police. I had 3 loving sisters.
So you were hoping.
Yeah, I had a great childhood. I had a great high school career also. Football was my main sport, but my shot put record from 1973 still stands today in my high school.
Really?
I'm like, get those kids some Cheerios, almost 50 years. Almost 58-6. Yeah, it was a pretty good toss, but guys are throwing way over 60 now, but 58-6 back in 1973. So my shot put record still stands. I won the New York State Wrestling Championship. I was undefeated as a heavyweight. First guy from my high school ever to win the states. And football was my main sport. So I was recruited by Ohio State, Penn State, Paterno, and Woody Hayes, highly recruited back then. But the coach from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, came up to Glens Falls. He had a big 10-gallon hat on. He had a cowboy buckle, cowboy boots, walking around upstate New York in the 70s, stuck out like a Thor thumb. But my mom fell in love with him.
Who was the coach?
Bob Cutbirth. Back then it was Dave Smith and then Ron Meyer.
Right, that's not thinking of Ron Meyer, but it was Cutbirth. Okay.
Yeah, Cutbirth was the O-line coach. He was just the O-line coach. But he came up and he got to know my mom, stayed the week up in Glens Falls. I came back from Ohio State, and I'm like, I'm playing for Woody Hayes. I'm playing for Ohio State. And my mom grabs me. She's, come here, Jimmy, come here. She goes, you'll just be a number at Ohio State. Go down to SMU. They really want you there. So I ended up going down to SMU. And I had a great career down there. I broke in as a freshman when I started, when freshmen could first start in varsity. So I had a career start record for a while. I was co-captain of the team. I had a great career down there. But the biggest thing, I met Fritz von Erich. And Fritz came up to me and and I never watched wrestling. I wasn't a wrestling fan, paid no attention to it at all. And Fritz came up to me and goes, "Kid, you might be a wrestler." I said, "No, I'm going to be in the NFL for 10 years. Nice talking to you, Mr. Wrestler." So I go to the Atlanta Falcons in 1977. I get hurt during preseason, have 2 knee surgeries. I stay on injured reserve the whole season. Go back in 78, try to play. Boom, they cut me. I went up to Canada. I was playing with the Toronto Argonauts with Forrest Gregg, head coach up in the Argos, offensive lineman, a dime a dozen. They clipped me up there. I said, "Let me call this Fritz von Erich guy up." I called Fritz, and Jerry, you'll appreciate this. What a gift Fritz gave to me. Because back then, if you weren't somebody's kid, if you weren't related to somebody, you didn't get in the business. Now everybody, you got a wrestling school. You want to be a wrestler? There's tons of wrestlers. Back then, if you weren't connected, you didn't get into business. And so Fritz brought me down to the Sportatorium and opened up, what a huge gift, opened up the business of an outsider complete. And David Manning, the referee down there, kind of showed me the ropes a little bit. Gino Hernandez, God bless Gino, took me under his wing, took care of me a little bit there in Dallas. And that's how I broke in with Fritz. But
I understand David or Gary Hart bought you your first pair of boots too, right?
Yeah, Gary Hart gave me my first pair of trunks. He sure did. Yeah,
wow.
He sure did. Oops. All right, Deborah.
Jim, tell us a little bit. I mean, John and I are such football fans. Woody Hayes, Joe Paterno. Wow, you're recruited by the very, very best in collegiate football. Then, how was it? I mean, you're a little country boy from upstate New York, and all of a sudden, these absolute gods are walking into your doors room there, and that had to be awesome.
Yeah, well, I was such a straight kid back then. I wore a sport coat and tie because I went to a Catholic school most of my life. But in high school, my dad realized he needed to move me to the public school with the bigger sports teams. So I went to the public school, but I still wore a sport coat and tie.
Wow. What you weigh back in those days too?
250.
250. Wow, you were a big 6'4" or something like that.
Yeah, 6'3", 250. Yeah, so. Yeah, I was a good sized kid, especially back then, Nowadays, if you're not 6'5", 300, you're not big. Back then, 6'2", 250 was big. So, yeah, I was considered a big guy, offensive guard. And like I said, I had the shot put record. I wrestled. I played basketball 1 year, and football was my main sport. And that was a pretty good offensive lineman, man. Yeah. So, I did 7 recruiting trips. Back then, they didn't have a limit on recruiting trips.
Where all did you go?
Syracuse, Ohio State, Penn State, SMU, Kentucky, Rhode Island, and New Mexico.
Wow. All of it. Wow.
How did New Mexico end up in the finals?
Pardon?
How did New Mexico end up in the finals?
I don't know.
You got all these great schools, and then all of a sudden you got New Mexico.
They were offering me trips, and I had never been anywhere but Glens Falls, New York. Of course, me and Gene Okerlund used to go, "We're going to talk to Hacksaw Duggan, who took a cut and pay to leave SMU and go to the Atlanta Falcons."
Well, you did. Jim, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still pretty active alum. Me and Deborah go back to the usually homecoming. This year we went back to the Navy game. Watched SMU beat Navy, but I was doing the ESPN deal, and the guy has me up in the booth, and he says, "Hacksaw, what can you say good about SMU?" And I'm like, "SMU, they have the best looking uniforms in the country."
They're
struggling a little bit. They're struggling.
They'll come around though. They got that Texas football down there. They'll come around. So John will know you went into states in New York at heavyweight when you're in high school. John, New York is that state is probably one of along with California, is probably one of the most difficult places to win a state championship because all these other states have 3-4 different divisions. back in those days, and still to this day, New York and California are the only teams in the United States that only have one division. So those big ass states all come together, and you got to wrestle everybody in the state to become state champion there. So man, that's quite a feat there. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, most of the guys are all from big cities, public school number 128, and from Glens Falls High.
Did you think about playing two sports in college? You think about wrestling also?
No, but I was recruited by Iowa State. Chris Taylor, remember? Yeah, you
guys know Chris.
Yeah, I don't have to explain to you guys who Chris Taylor is. But yeah, I met Chris on a recruiting trip. Yeah, but no, football. I was so focused on football, and when I got cut, that was such unbelievable time for me. I was lost. I was in the Furman University, and they had a traffic circle in Greenville, and I just drove around the traffic circle. I didn't know what to do. I've always played football. I've always been good at it, and now they're turning your playbook.
Yeah,
so it was a traumatic deal, but I wish, looking back at it, that I started wrestling much sooner. You know, I look at my friends, Jake DiBiase, guys that grew up in the business, second generation wrestlers, Kurt Henning. Those guys are just that much more polished. They know the business. You know, they were in the ring when they were 16. I got in when I was 25, where I was like, I can beat him.
Well, I tell you what, brother, I'd compare your career with any of those guys' career. Also, you're the damn Hall of Fame, so it could have gone much better than what it is. And you drew money everywhere you went. So you know that experience level, just because of your personality, your tenacity, and being an athlete that you were, you work your way to the top without all those connections and everything. That's hat off in your favor, brother.
Well, that's one thing you understand, Jerry, is how competitive wrestling is. That's when a kid goes, you know, I want to be a wrestler. I said, well, chase your dreams, because I never thought Daniel Bryan would make it. But there's a kid that worked hard and had the desire and became a big, huge star. But if you look at it as a businessman, there's 1,200 NFL football players. There's 500 NBA basketball players. There's about 200 WWE, AEW wrestlers. It's television. It's more competitive than sports. And it's just not kids from America. You got kids from Japan, Australia, Europe. Everybody wants one of those 200 spots. It's a very, very competitive business. But I got to tell you, keep going. It's been a great business for me. You know, everybody sees the dark side of the ring and talks about my good buddy Jake the Snake Roberts and all that stuff. I'm the opposite side of the coin. Me and my wife, we've been together almost 40 years. I never had to go to rehab for booze or drugs. You know, I did a lot of both. Can't throw no stones, but just never got addicted. You know, that was I joke. I said, no felony arrests, a couple of misdemeanors, but it was the 80s, you know.
Hey, how did a straight kid?
Me and the Sheik will live in infamy together, you know. And the worst thing about it, people go, well, you and your good buddy, the Sheik. I gave the guy a ride one day, but I made my bet. I got to lay in it.
Hey, how did a straight guy from Glen Falls, New York, end up with Gino Hernandez? Because that's talking about two polar opposites.
That was the start of the transition. Yeah. Yeah. I was an extremely straight kid that I got into wrestling. I sure was. And then, you know, as time went on, because people, especially our generation of guys, people try to compare us to sports teams. I said, no, we're more like a rock and roll band, you know, different city, different country. And that's my old joke. I tell you, the old days, the booze, the broads, the drugs. God, I miss the old days.
I do too.
Yeah. It's funny when somebody asks me that, they go, wasn't there like a lot of drugs and like a lot of women and stuff? Yeah, it was wonderful. Then they just shut up. They have nothing else to say after that.
I have a slight memory loss. It's the 80s.
Yeah. But that was the golden age of wrestling. You know, Hogan, Macho, Warrior. And that was just a moment in time, man. I was lucky to be part of that group. Because, you know, the WWF was my heyday, where I worked with DiBiase, Dusty, and Orton. But I also worked in the WWE, where I worked with Dusty's kid, DiBiase's kid, and Orton's kid. First, I beat up the old man, then I beat up the kid.
That's always a thrill too. I always read Randy Orton when I see him. I said, I beat up every damn or every Orton and your family has beat me up except you. Your grandfather beat me up. Your father beat me up. Your uncle beat me up. Everybody beat me. Every Orton beat me up except him. So.
You give me a shot.
Yeah, there's still time.
Yeah, there's still time. Yeah. Well, take us back to that Dave Manning. What a great trainer Dave was. Dave really trained a lot of good guys, and a lot of guys turned out to be sorry. Was you around Scandor, Akbar, and those guys like that back then? Was you there?
Yeah, I was in Dallas for a short time, really, with Gino and those guys. And my first match, they were like, somebody didn't show up. They're like, "You got your gear?" And what a tough transition, Johnny. I appreciate this. For the football player, you got a helmet, shoulder pads. The fans are 50 yards away from you. You got 10 other guys around you. All of a sudden, you're a pair of short shorts and patent leather boots, and the fans are sitting right there looking at you. I mean, I was nervous as hell, man. It took me a long time to understand the business, but I left.
I was almost exactly the same. I went down to Sportatorium. I played a little football, and all of a sudden I get cut. I planned on playing for 8 or 10 years. Didn't work out. And I come down to Sportatorium with Skandor Akbar, gave me a job, and I'm just expecting to go out there and work on an opening match. And Lou Perez doesn't show up, the working cousin of Al Perez. And they stick me in the main event that night, my very first match in the Sportatorium. And I'm the same way. I'm like, this is, I'm not sure I'm ready for this.
I had a mustache. I just kept twisting it. Big Jim Duggan. And I wore a long gold bathrobe to the ring.
How long of training was you there? How long did you train before that first time match happened?
Not a couple of weeks, 3
weeks.
And
that's something. I mean, now guys go 2-3 years of training. Where guys like John and myself, I was the same way. One of my brother's partners got hurt up in Joplin, Missouri. Hey, put your little brother in there. He wrestles in school. He'll know what to do. The same way, I had no training basically.
They didn't give you much training, and which was good. But also, I got done with there. I went up to visit my dad up in Glens Falls, New York. He knew Arnie Skolin. WWF is running a show. Arnie pulls me into the show. They like me. They bring me to TV. Now I'm doing jobs on the WWF TV as Big Jim Duggan for Stan Hansen, Patera, Hogan. There's one of me and Hogan. I'm short haired and clean shaven and wearing my long gold bathrobe with the red and black trunks Gary Hart gave me. And finally, Skolin and Vince Sr., they called me in the office. Of course, back then, everything's cigar smoke. They got the cigars going. And they're like, "Kid, you might have a future, but come up something better than Big Jim and get rid of that gold bathrobe." So they said, "We're going to send you out to learn how to wrestle." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where are you guys going to send me? They're like, "We're going to send you to Hawaii." So I went to Hawaii. I was working for High Chief Peter Maivia in Hawaii in like 1979, 1980. Haku was over there. Ming, we were both young guys making $20-40 a week, maybe. My mom would send us care packages over to Hawaii with peanut butter and crackers. And over there, I'm a relatively young kid, and they're like, put a hood on. They put me under a mask, and I wrestle as the convict.
What was your name?
Pardon?
What was your name?
The Convict.
Oh, convict! Wow.
Because I had the mask, right? I'm the convict. So
how often were you wrestling in Hawaii for Chief?
Twice a week, maybe. Yeah. Like I said, we were starving, but we all lived in a motel. We're all young guys. Siva and Alpha, they would come through and they'd take us out and buy us a steak. We were starving. You remember the day you died, right? We were eating Chinese buffets all week or all month. Siva and Alfie come in, they take us to a steakhouse, buy us a steak. But I'm down there trying to dress up the convict look. So I put little C's on my mask for the convict, right? So I stomped down the ring, and the fans were like, "Convict, why'd you put those ears on your mask?" Said, "They're not ears, they're C's for the convict."
Didn't a lot of groups, like the guys going all the way to Japan, would stop off in Hawaii and would work there a couple shows for Peter Maivia?
Exactly. And I'll tell you what, John, this will, because way back later on, I worked with Andre where I knocked Andre out with my 2x4. Andre tore the hood off the Convict in Hawaii. I met the man over in Hawaii and I got to know him a little bit and all that. Because what a huge favor he did letting me knock him out. I mean, that elevated my career. But he remembered way back when I was Jabroni Joe with the Convict hood on. And yeah, I remember you, kid. And we had a good rapport with Andre. And because all the guys would come back from Hawaii, or excuse me, Japan, stop in Hawaii, do a big show. We'd have a big show whenever the guys would come through at the arena. But the rest of the time, we're little small buildings. But I got to know Andre and the Samoans there.
And
I left there.
And where did you go from Hawaii?
To Georgia Championship Wrestling. And I went in as Big Jim Duggan. Went back to Big Jim.
Back to Big Jim again. The Convict is the Convicts.
I had Charlie Cook. Remember Charlie Cook?
Oh yeah, Charlie Cook. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have football matches with Charlie Cook. He had his helmet, I had my helmet. When Ole Anderson came in and Crockett and those guys, I didn't get along with Ole. We just didn't mesh. So I left there and I went to Pensacola with the Fullers. Mm-hmm. And it was great. I had a $500 a week guarantee. I was living on the beach. And with Fuller, you get a bag of weed, $400 for any combination you wanted. You know, it was great. I was living on the beach, a hot little stripper chick, you know. And so I met Buck Robley and Bruiser Brody in Atlanta before Crockett took it over. And they went to San Antonio for Joe Blanchard. So Buck Robley calls me, goes, "Hey, we got a great spot with Brody over here in San Antonio." And I'm like, "Well, Buck, things are going pretty good here in Pensacola."
50-mile trips, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Brody calls me the next day, "Get your ass out here, learn how to wrestle," you know. So I worked with Brody on top that first night for Paul Bosch at the Sam Houston Coliseum. I got my envelope. I went in the bathroom. I opened it up. It was $1,000. I'm hooked. I said, I'm on my way to San Antonio. And that's where I became Hacksaw and got the 2x4 and really developed the character in San Antonio with Joe Blanchard.
How did that come about exactly? How did you become Hacksaw?
Well, the story of on my football days, I'd run down, I cut through the wedge on kickoff teams, I'd break through the wedge, hex my way through the wedge. That's all bull.
You're a wedge breaker.
Yeah, nothing to do with it. No. Me, Buck, and Brody sitting around the kitchen table going, "How about this? How about Hacksaw?" Because people go, "You're Hacksaw Duggan, but you carry a 2x4. Shouldn't you be?"
Did the 2x4 come along with it? The 2x4 come along with Hacksaw at that time?
Well, no, I'll tell you, because, you know, as you know, back then, that was long before sports entertainment, you know, and if, you know, you think it's fake, come up in the ring. We'll show you if it's fake or not. So you got to fight a lot of local tough guys. And if you're a heel, the people, they really hated your guts. They'd spit at you, punch at you. And as you know, you'd walk out to the car with a group of heels. You wouldn't walk out by yourself. You had that much heat. Excuse me. So just getting back and forth in the dressing room was tough. You know, they have these rope barricades in most buildings back then. So I'm sitting back in like Amarillo, Lubbock, West Texas, somewhere, all covered with loogies and bruises, sitting there rethinking my career choice, you know. And Brody comes in, he goes, "Duggan," he says, "if you carry something to the ring, carry something you can use. Forget those feathered boas and sequin robes," right? So I sit there and I look down and go, "Well, here's a piece of wood." And I came out yelling, waving that 2x4. It was like parting the Red Sea. Then people scattered. I got to the ring, I'm like, "This is great." You know?
And Brody was one hell of a guy. It sounds like you formed a pretty nice friendship with Bruiser Brody.
Yeah, I never worked Puerto Rico because of what happened with Bruce. Yeah, he was very influential in my career.
Yeah.
I would say like we never hung out and traveled together and none of that, but we worked quite a bit, especially in my real formative stuff.
Yeah, he was a football player like you from Iowa State and West Texas. So so you guys had that
too. Stan, one of my good friends to this day is Stan.
Yeah, you mentioned a guy a little bit earlier, Buck Robley. He's one of the most underrated guys in our business as far as business minds go. I mean, you hear Buck Robley, you know, he's a party guy. You hear more about his partying and you do about his creativity. And that's a shame because the guy was a brilliant guy in our business backstage.
Well, you think Mid-South, we would do our TV at the Irishman Neal's Boys Club, and then run Superdome shows. I mean, we blinded Junkyard Dog to Freebirds, blinded Junkyard Dog. I dressed up in a gorilla suit and got him. I mean, just great professional wrestling, you know, just great. And that's another thing.
Idea for the gorilla suit.
Pardon?
That's such a great story.
Yeah, right. So it's a loser leave town, Dog versus DiBiase, and everybody knows, you know, Dog's a marquee guy. He's not going to lose, so it's got to be DiBiase. So I get dressed in a complete gorilla suit with makeup and everything. I stand out in front of the TV studios with a bunch of balloons in my hand, right? And the fans, you know, gorilla, you want to come to wrestling? I'm like, ooh. So they bring me in, and the whole show I'm passing out balloons, cheering the baby faces. Finally, it's Dog and DiBiase. They're having a hell of a battle. Dog takes a bump out of the ring. I brush him off. Boom, run him into the post. I pull that gorilla mask off. They're like, it's Duggan. It's Cockeye Duggan.
Cockeye Duggan.
But I wouldn't get mad about the cockeye deal. I'd be like, it's Duggan. It ain't Duggan.
That's great.
What kind of
heat? Such a great heel. That's such a great heel response. It's like, you fat asshole. You go, I'm not an asshole.
And so Dog came back under the mask of Stagger Lee, and we could never unmask him to prove it was Dog that came back. What a great angle, you know.
Right.
Even though he had to lose and leave town, he came back as Stagger Lee. Great little territory. And for a while, about 80% of the WWE Hall of Fame guys came through Mid-South.
Right. Yeah.
Because you wrestle 9 times a week. You do an individual interview for every city. So you really learned your trade.
Bill Watts had a heck of a machine going down there. He brought in some guys that do the book for him that were really old school wrestling guys. And that's what Bill was. But Bill had an affinity for big guys, athletes, whether they were wrestlers or football players or what. Bill really enjoyed helping out athletic guys down there.
Yeah,
he did. You guys were loaded with them.
Yeah, Junkyard Dog, Dr. Death, myself. There were other guys, I mean, the Blade Runners, Warrior and the Sting. You know, he could also be a very vicious guy. He's changed his life and is reborn and everything, but he was a vicious man down there at Mid-South too. He ran a tight ship, but also an extremely successful ship.
Did you enjoy working for him?
Pardon?
Did you enjoy working for him?
Well, you know, especially because when WrestleMania started, Vince came down WrestleMania 1. He grabbed Junkyard Dog, brought Dog up for WrestleMania 1. That elevated me to the top guy in Mid-South, man. So, yeah, he was paying me. I bought my first and second home down in Louisiana. The folks I really was over down there. Then WrestleMania 2 came, and Jake went up for WrestleMania 2. And Jake and I still stay in touch. And he called me, go, hey, Duggan, this is the place to be. So I went up for WrestleMania 3. DiBiase's still out in Mid-South. He goes, well, shoot, I can't go to New York. You know, Jake the Snake Roberts, Junkyard Dog, Hacksaw Duggan. I'm Ted DiBiase. Shit, he goes up, gets the best gimmick of anybody, the $1 Million Man. It worked out the best at all for Teddy. But a lot of guys came through Mid-South. With hard territory, a lot of driving. But we were all young guys. So at Shreveport, we'd be at the Sheraton, you know, and every night was a different party, a different city.
How were the Freebirds down there? Were they crazy in Mid-South? They were crazy everywhere.
My first run across the Freebird, actually, Terry Gordy, God bless him, one of my best friends. They're a great story. And Dr. Death, and those guys became best friends. And the three of us, even though we were all best friends, we're all never together at the same time. Over all the years we were together, now both those guys are gone. But I met the Birds when I was at Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I moved in with Terry Gordy. Wow. And I was living with Gordy, man. We're drinking the Jack Daniels, driving in that Gordy van. Buddy Roberts. People go, you know, Buddy's a bad drunk. I'm like,
Yeah.
I've been around bad drunks. I know bad drunks. Next day, I'm going, that guy's a bad drunk. Oh.
Hey, Hacksaw, to this day, Michael Hayes is mad at us. Buddy came to a match in Nashville after Michael was already an agent for working for WWE, and we're in the back and we're sitting there with Buddy. And that one, I just wanted to talk to Buddy too, but we got him pretty liquored up, and Michael had to drive from Nashville down to Atlanta with a liquored up Buddy. Michael was so mad at us. He goes, "You bastards, you bastards."
He's a horrible. I mean, yeah, it's a different level. But he's gone too. You know, shit. And Big Gordy, I miss Gordy and Doc. Man, I was living with Doc in Louisiana when I met my wife, and then of course those guys. I went to New York. Doc went to Japan. Gordy went to Japan. They hooked up over there. And over the years, we'd see one another, and they'd see each other in Japan, but the three of us were never together at the same time.
So
well, probably a good thing that you guys were never together. Did you ever see any of those guys throw down? Because all three of them could go, Buddy and Doc.
Well, Buddy, yeah, Gordy could really go. Yeah. And he wouldn't sell neither. I'd see he'd have his drink and be pow, pow, pow. Oh, wait a minute, brother. Yeah, Michael. I haven't really seen Michael go, but yeah, of course, back in the day, there was a lot of, before there was dash cams and all that stuff. The police would cut you a break. If you get in a fight in a bar, you wouldn't get sued. I mean, you get thrown out. Yeah, years ago, me and Gordy, we went out in Shreveport, Louisiana. We came back to the Alamo Plaza Motel. We went to the Alamo Plaza.
$8 a night.
Yeah, and we're pounding on the door trying to get the grappler to open up. He wouldn't open up. So we ended up, long story short, both of us crashed into the door, crashed the door down. It was the wrong room. There's a guy on the phone. They're in here. They're in here now. But back then the cops came. We got thrown out of the hotel. We paid the damages. Nobody got arrested. It was a different time.
So Hacksaw, I think you could be immortal because you're a straight kid from Glen Falls. You end up with Gino Hernandez. You live with a free bird. You beat cancer twice. I really think you actually might be immortal.
I don't know, man. I've thrown the dice a lot. I don't want to throw them anymore. Yeah, I had that heart issue too, right after about 64, right at 65. And so I had a thing called an ablation where they had to go up into my heart and scar it a little bit. But I take my medication. But my doctor's like, Jim, you don't see a lot of old heavy guys. I'm like, I got your point, doc. So I went from like 275. I last time I was at the doctor, I was 228, lighter than high school.
Wow.
And he's like, Jim, you're supposed to be 225.
Sounds like a wrestling coach, right?
Yeah, but I just turned 69. I feel good, and I get my checkups. So I was talking earlier, my wife's like, well, it's time for your physical. I'm like, I don't need a physical. I feel great. She goes, too late, already on the books. So we went in, they took blood tests. They called me up and said, your PSA level's high. Did another test. They come back, Mr. Duggan, you have the most aggressive type of prostate cancer you can have.
Wow.
Something you'll remember to the day you die when somebody says that to you. Me and my wife were sitting side by side. She started crying. I just sank in my chair. So what do we do? Let's have surgery right away. We went down to Charleston, South Carolina. They did like a 4-hour surgery in a Da Vinci robot. They did all the surgery. I came back, did the rehab for like 3 months, went back, got tested. Mr. Duggan, you still have cancer. Guys, I got to tell you, I was as depressed as I ever been in my life, man. And I was talking to you earlier. I went down to get my radiation treatment, and radiation, folks, you wouldn't know the difference. I get my X-ray machine or X-ray. Boop, boop. I come in and go, Mr. Duggan, radiation. Boop, boop. Wouldn't know the difference. The gentleman sitting across from me is suffering through chemo, lost his hair, spitting into a rag. I was blessed, man. So make sure you guys get your physicals because I had no symptoms up to the day.
So that's the way he delivered the news. There wasn't no beating around the bush, Mr. Duggan.
No, they don't sugarcoat it anymore at all. No, I don't think any of the doctors, they don't sugarcoat it. And like I said, Johnny was saying, this was my second bout with cancer years ago when I was with WCW, and my daughter, that was even more hard maybe because I was passing blood, and Deborah's like, well, you go to the doctor. I'm like, well, I took a bad bump in the ring. She goes, well, you don't bump. What the hell are you talking about? So I went and they like, Mr. Duggan had kidney cancer. And again, early detection saved my life. They cut me open. All my cancer was encapsulated inside my kidney. It had spread. I didn't have to even go through radiation or chemo. I just had the kidney removed. So, like I said, I got a lot going on. Deborah was filling stuff out at the doctor earlier, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty rough on paper. She goes, not just on paper. It's bad when you know the kid, you do the autograph session, the kid comes up and they look at the picture, they're like,
yeah.
I guess that could be him. I don't know.
Yeah. I got told one time when I was going through customs, the guy goes, you look like that JBL guy, just older. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
Ron asked me one day, he goes, hey, have you lost weight? I said, yeah, mainly in my arms and neck.
You get that question. Did you used to be Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. It's amazing, though, as you guys know, how many folks still recognize old school wrestling. Of course, I joke, you didn't have 200 channels to choose from back then. You know,
well, I think that's the greatest thing for these kids nowadays, because there's that YouTube, and you know, we'll never really die, you know, because that YouTube channels and stuff like that.
Really has. It really has. As you said, do the autograph sessions. You have young kids. Their parents were very, you know, the last deal. I was your age when I watched him. You know.
I always hate when a kid comes up to me, nice looking young ladies. My grandmother used to think you were hot. You know, your grandmother. How about you? Well, no, you're too old.
After the prostate thing, don't even worry about that, brother.
When they did that,
it's amazing the appeal of wrestling around the world. It's, you know, I do a lot of charity events with the NFL guys, and I'm always asking them, like, world champions, where in the world do you fellas go?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we went to London. I'm like, that's like going to the West Coast. Are you kidding? Go to London. I mean, nobody knows Tom Brady down in Christchurch, New Zealand. They'll go, oh.
Hacksaw, when I lived in Bermuda, they used to always give me hell about American sports because we always say we're world champions. So Major League Baseball only plays teams in North America. The NFL only plays teams in the USA. They go, how you guys world champions? They go, just shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Well, that's probably good deal. At my 40 years in the ring, I've wrestled every state in the union, every province in Canada, and 30 different countries. And a lot of guys are like 50 different countries. It's amazing the appeal of wrestling around the world. It's crazy.
That ain't bad for Opie from Glen Falls, New York, is it?
It's been quite a trip, that's for sure, man. It really has. It really has. But I still get up to Glens Falls. One of my sisters still lives up there. So, and it's still a nice town. But now I live in South Carolina. I got a little 10-acre farm. I tell you guys. So that's the deal. We got 10 acres. It's all fenced in. I'm about 50 yards off the road. It's a dirt road, no street lights or nothing. Right before Christmas, we got the Christmas lights on. I'm sitting watching TV. Very seldom do people even come to our gate. Nobody ever comes to our house because we're 50 yards around after the fence. All of a sudden, there's this huge pounding on our front door. Boom, boom, boom. I'm in the living room. I jump up. My wife, she's packing in the bedroom. She jumps up. We both run. We come into the foyer here, and we got double glass doors. The double glass doors burst open. This guy, 25-year-old man guy, comes in. We got a step, and he trips, and he falls over the step as he comes into the house. So now as I'm coming around the corner, he's on his knees. So he's perfect for me. I thought this guy's coming to hurt us. You know, he's coming to my house. Everybody knows where I live. He's in the house. But he was right on his knees. So I got him by goozle, I got him by the throat and the arm and pushed him right back out onto the front porch. And I got him pinned on the front porch. Now he starts screaming, help me, help me. So I think he's talking to Deborah. And I said, watch him. So she puts her foot on him. So here on the front porch. So here, because we live out in the country, I got ducks and chickens and everything. I got a big 44 Magnum by the front door because it's so loud. It scares the coyotes and foxes away. Boom, you know. So that's not my home defense gun, but that's the one gun I grabbed. So I got the great big 44, and I'm checking my the Model 29. The Dirty Harry one is a Model 29, right? So I'm waiting at the back door, 1001, 1002, because I sure somebody else was coming in. I thought it was a home invasion. Nobody comes in. I come back to this front guy on the porch. Now he starts screaming, "They're going to kill me. Help me. They're going to kill me." You can't write this stuff. At least WWE can't write it. So anyway, out on my dark dirt road, you hear, "We're going to get you, you effing son of a gun. You were going to kill you." So I yell at my wife. I'm saying, "Turn off the lights on the house. Turn off the lights on the house." She turns off all the lights. She calls 911. She's in hysterics. Lucky she didn't have health problems. She says, "Send the fire truck, send the ambulance, send everybody." She wanted lights and sirens because the cops a lot of times come quiet, you know. So now I got this guy in my, I'm sitting in a chair. I'm holding on his back. He's spread eagle on my front porch. I'm looking, trying to see through the darkness, and somebody's coming else over my fence. The old hearted pounded me, leg out of my, and it was probably took 15 minutes for the cops to finally see that first blue light flicker. I was like, all right. And then, of course, the troops. And then once they all came, boom, we had Kershaw County Sheriff's Department. They did a great job and showed up and hooked the guy up and took him away and everything. But it was unbelievable scare for 15, 20 minutes. It was terrifying.
Was there other people out in the yard then?
Yes, there was two other guys.
Did the cops find them? Did the cops find them too?
Yep. They got, but we took us like 2 days to find out what happened. But this guy, he's got a crush on a 14-year-old girl. He went down way down at the end of the far end of the street, went into her house. Her dad and brother were in there. They had their guns. They started pistol whipping them with their guns, chasing him down the road. Wow. He ran down the road screaming for help all the way, saw our Christmas lights, climbed over a fence, lost his shoes, climbed over a fence, and came crashing into the house. I mean, because thank goodness, if I was in the bedroom, that's where bedroom to keep your home defense weapon. I would have had that, my little 40 cal automatic. I would have had that in my hand. And when he came through, I'd be, oh shit, boom, I might have shot him, which would have been horrible. So it worked out well. And plus every conservative news station covered it. Fox, Newsmax, One America News, none of the CNN, MSNBC, they didn't touch it. But Tucker Carlson, I did a couple shows with Tucker because it was pro-gun, pro-police, So Knobs calls me, the nasty boy Knobs calls me, goes, "Duggan, how much you pay that guy to break in your house?"
Me and Jerry thought it might have been Brian Blair. We thought maybe you paid like the Bumblebee to come break in and do the job for you.
No, it worked out where it wasn't bad, but we didn't know. People come up, say I ran out of gas. I mean, plus come into the house. He's in my house. That's where the cop, well, you could have shot him. I'm like, I don't want to shoot nobody, Christ. 25-year-old kid.
That was always where I live out here north of Tampa, out in the county, out here on some acreage and all fenced in and everything. And got no neighbors. And I'm about, I never have any trick-or-treaters at all. I've lived there 40 some odd years. Never had one trick-or-treater come down my driveway because it's so damn dark. But I traveled so much. That was one of my big fear with my wife. So I got a gun. I can't shoot a gun, so I got a 20 gauge shotgun. It's all you got to do is point it up one direction, pull the trigger. That thing's gonna get somebody. So don't worry.
Just scare them off. That's what. That's the same thing with my girls. I have two daughters that live by themselves in Florida. They don't want a gun in the house. I got them a little 410 single barrel. I said, just shoot it. Don't shoot it at them. Just shoot it. They'll run away. Scare them off. But it was kind of a scary thing, but it worked out, and plus I think it a lot of publicity out of it.
Did your bookings pick up quite a bit then, huh?
Yeah.
Jerry, you should have seen his line in Arkansas.
That's when I'm in the hospital with all my health issues. Jake the Snake calls me, goes, "Duggan," he says, "you can bump your prices up now."
Should have seen his line in Arkansas, Jerry. It was insane. And it's all, hey, tell us about the home invader. I'm going, oh, come on. That had to be, at one, finally, I'm with the Knobs. I'm like, that was a work. It had to be a work. He's making way too much money off this.
Yeah. Well, you guys both know Deborah. Like I said, we're in a dirt road, nobody around us, but we got Christmas lights everywhere. They're on the porch. I mean, nobody comes down our road, but it's Christmas out. And so it was like a beacon, and drew that guy, and he ran and lost his shoes climbing over our fence.
Did you give him his shoes back?
I think the cops got him for him. Yeah, 'cause that was, I mean, it was after it was all over. Poor Deborah. I mean, she was very, very scared. Yeah.
I don't blame her.
Oh yeah.
Because the guys like the dispatcher, we went and met the deputies, the sheriff, and his dispatcher like a month later to thank him and everything. And sure, her and the dispatcher really had a nice long visit. Yeah. She was scared. I was scared.
Well, Jim, changing the tone of the subject here, and
Yeah.
story that's that's famous that you and Sheik. I mean,
I'll
you know,
talk to you later, brother.
there's a million versions of that, and I've never heard your side of the story.
Yeah. Well,
We all get in trouble. Damn Sheik. It's Sheik's fault.
well, no. I was over 21. I made my bed. I got to lay in it, man. But I tell you what, it was a huge blow to my career. I was lucky to survive it professionally, man. But you think it was right after WrestleMania 3, 93,000 people, Pontiac Silverdome, the Killer Bees are getting killed by Nikolai and the Sheik. I run down with my 2x4. Boom, I got Nikolai. Boom, I got the Sheik. Oh, 93,000 folks. USA, USA. 3 weeks later, I'm on the side of a cop car in the Garden State Parkway.
Wow.
I mean, what a huge fall from grace. But anyway, so what happened, we did the show. We flew into Newark. And I ran across the Sheik, comes up to me, goes, Duggan, I have no credit card. Maybe you give me a ride. I'm like, yeah, sure, Sheik, I'll give you a ride. Jump in the car, buddy. We jumps in and he says, let me get some St. Pauli girl beer. I'll never drink another St. Pauli girl beer as long as I live, I promise you. Anyway, so we got the same, we're in New Jersey. We're on our way to Asbury Park from Newark. We're going down the Garden State Parkway. And I'm like, well, Sheik, I got a little weed. You want to smoke a doobie? He's like, yeah. So we smoked the doob. We're driving down. I'm sipping on the beer. I go by the trooper. The trooper looks at me. He's like, he comes screaming out. At the time, I'm living in Louisiana. I was drive-through daiquiri huts in Louisiana. It's not illegal to drink and drive in Louisiana. So I'm drinking the beer. Hi, officer, driving by him. Lights and sirens, pulls me over. So the trooper comes up to the car. He goes, you're drinking while driving. I said, yes, sir, but I'm not drunk. He goes, it's illegal in New Jersey. I was like, oh. He goes, you got anything else you want to tell me about? I said, yes, sir, because in Louisiana, they take it away from me, Get out of here, Duggan. I said, yes, sir. I have a small amount of marijuana under my seat. Out of the car, feet back and spread them.
Oh,
wow. USA. Nothing's working, right?
Nothing's working.
Nothing's working. And now they pull the Sheik key out. He's got his purse. They open it up. 3 grams of coke sitting in the purse. Now they got him on now there's all kinds of cops. So guys going down the Garden State Parkway going, there's Hacksaw Duggan and the Iron Sheik.
And you guys were in a major feud at that time, right?
Right. I just got done hitting with my 2x4. WrestleMania 3. Yeah, this was way before the sports entertainment. This was when kayfabe was strong.
Right.
And so I got 2 tickets, drinking while driving and having less than a half ounce of weed. I just had a couple doobies, Sheik had a felony bust. He had 3 grams of cocaine. He went in front of a judge, got bonded out, and we made the show.
Wow.
And we didn't tell anybody. So I called Deborah that night and they go, honey, we got popped, but nobody knows about it. This was long before the internet, right? This is way back. And she called me at 6 o'clock the next morning. Everybody knows. Everybody. So my first call was my dad, God bless him, who was my best man in my wedding, best man I ever met. He's still chief of police in Glens Falls. He gets ambushed, TV camera. How about your kid, cocaine, marijuana, partying on the parkway? My pop's like, what? So I called my dad. He goes, you get arrested for cocaine? I said, no, sir. I got arrested for marijuana. He goes, I know sooner or later. He chewed my butt pretty good. But then my family rallied around me because they realized what a huge blow it was going to be to my career. And my next call was to Vince. And never in my life have I gotten through to Vince McMahon so quick. Usually I'm on hold for 10 minutes. Duggan for McMahon, yeah, hold. I'm like, Jim Duggan for Vince McMahon. Click, click. And guys, I'll tell you, to the day I die, I will remember verbatim what Vince McMahon said to me. He goes, Jim, what have you done to us? And I said, Vince, I'm embarrassed and ashamed. He says, turn in your tickets and go home. Hung the phone up. But back then we had the big stack of tickets, I turned my tickets and I went home, and he cut a big promo. I waited a couple of days. Jake tried to schmooze it over. And Jake called me and goes, you're screwed. It ain't going to happen. You're not coming back. And so I went off the deep end. Thank goodness, never stayed with me, man. I did every drug, cut down trees with an axe. If a rabbit ran through my backyard, I had at it. I mean, I was off. But finally I kicked out, and I realized I had to get back to work. And I called up and set up a meeting with Dusty down at WCW. But before I flew down to see Dusty, Bruce Pritchard called me and said, don't do nothing drastic. We're going to bring you back. And they brought me back, but they kept me strong, but they never put the big gas on me ever again, So, yeah, it was a big shot to the career. But like I said, I was over 21. Not the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but it's in the top three.
Top three. Did you ever get a run with Hogan after that or before that?
No, we were always baby faces, me and Hogan. I worked with him. Big Jim didn't do too good, but no, never. And Vince, a lot of guys hate Vince McMahon. They're like, that son of a gun, Vince McMahon. I don't hate Vince McMahon. I'm 69 years old. Like I said, I travel the world to this day. I'm going to Scotland next month. I tell wrestling stories, sign autographs. And of all the 40 years, people talk a little bit about WCW, a little bit about WWE, a little bit about Mid-South, but WWF. So, I'm still making a living out of what Vince. Could he treated us better? Yeah, sure can. But the guy was my boss. He wasn't my friend. I never expected him to be a friend to me.
Jim, I met you when I've told you this before, when I was in high school, and I got a guy wanted to be my agent, ended up not being my agent, but he was supposed to be an agent of the Ultimate Warrior or something. I'm not sure the relationship. Warrior said he wasn't. I'm not sure what happened. Anyway, he got me tickets to a wrestling match in Amarillo. And I come up there and I got to meet you backstage, a lot of Jim Neidhart and you, and got to meet Warrior backstage. And you were had your 2x4 and you'd thrown it up and you dropped it backstage. And I asked you, when you came over and said hi to me, I said, you ever worry about dropping it in front of the crowd? And you just laughed. You go, no, you got to go for it, kid. And that's always stuck with me my whole life. It's funny how some little things has always stuck with you. You got to go for it, kid. When you get out there, you got to try. You just got to you got to go for it.
Especially before I had my eyes fixed. You guys know my eyes were cross-eyed. I'm cross-eyed. I roll in the ring, I'd be like, don't move. They're like, who's he talking to? But back then, after my deal on television, man, I would throw that board up as high as I could, and I'd get out from it, and knock on wood, I never missed it on TV. But people are like, you're really happy when you catch that. I'm like, yeah, I'm really happy.
Which one are you catching, right? The middle one, the middle one, or the two outside ones there?
But one time though, I got this big nasty splinter in my thumb, real bad splinter. And I went, oh.
Always a comedian. That's what we love about you, Jim. You're always funny.
I have a good time.
Yeah.
Hey Jim, when you were in Mid-South and WrestleMania 1 happens, they take Dog. WrestleMania 2 happens, they take you. Were you guys aware that Vince was taking over the wrestling world at that time? And did you think he'd be successful? What was your thoughts in Mid-South? Because you had a great brain running it in Bill Watts. You had a great territory. What were your thoughts? What was going to happen in the wrestling landscape the next 10 years?
Yeah, the first time I worked with like Kurt Hennig and the Road Warriors was a combination show with those guys up in Minnesota and Bill. We did a show at the Meadowlands where they were going to try to compete with Vince. But I mean, you just got to give Vince credit. Look at WWE with the Turner organization and all the power and connection they had, and for them to go head to head and to him to beat the Turner. Yeah, as smart as Bill is and Gagne and everybody else, Vince is in New York, New York, New York, and a lot of advantages to that. So I think the writing was on the wall, and the guys saw it. That's why guys were peeling off.
Well, we kind of went through the same thing, Greg Valentine left, Sarge left, and then when Hot Rod left, Hot Rod was really the tipping point there in Mid-Atlantic, when we kind of knew, hey, the war is going to be over pretty soon, he's going to win. So when Hot Rod left, because he was the anchor there in Atlanta and Mid-Atlantic, so we lost him. We lost our money train there.
Piper, he was my roommate. We did that Legend House show, that reality show. I had Piper as a roommate, so I could get away with anything. I'd blame it on Piper.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. That was a great programming. Now I'm surprised that WWE they really never tried to bring that concept back.
Yeah, I think what they took 8 wrestlers, 8 legend guys, and put us in a mansion out in Palm Springs for almost 5 weeks. I mean, I think it probably might have been because I know in the beginning it was like Pat, me, and Gene were hitting the vodka. The first week was the expensive stuff. By the end of the tour,
they took your phones away from you and everything, right? You were
phones away from us. You had your own camera crew. A camera guy, assistant camera guy, and a producer. They'd follow you around. They said, "Well, don't talk to him." Me. I said, "How you doing, guys? Don't talk to him, Duggan." But that first week we're out there, it was pretty dead, So I'm thinking, how can I spice things up a little bit? So I wait till everybody goes to bed, and I sneak out. I can't throw the pool furniture in the pool, but I set all the pool furniture in the pool because the splash would wake the guys up, right? So I get it all in the pool. I go to bed. I wake up the next morning. I go in the kitchen, and Pat Patterson and Gene Okerlund in there. And Pat is pissed off. He's like, "I just talked to Vince. He's going to pull the plug on the whole project. Somebody ruined all the pool furniture last night." And I was like, "Well, Piper, he wasn't in his bed last night." Piper comes in, they all jump on his butt. And then Tony and I we were very, very close to a fist fight. I mean, as close as I've been to probably not going. And I tell folks, I can understand Tony having trouble with me and Piper. We're a pain in the ass too, But how do you have trouble with Hillbilly Jim?
Wow.
The guy's like a Buddhist monk, he meditates, does music, he cooks. But Tony had trouble with everybody in the house. And one time we were real close. And that's why you don't have a lot of fights in dressing room in wrestling, I believe, because you're not going to go beat somebody up in the dressing room. The other guy, he knows how to fight too, and he's going to get his in. So it's one of those deals. Yeah, I won. And so I think that mutual assured destruction. Tony, Tony, we didn't go, but we were close. But actually at the Chippendales deal, they took us to Las Vegas, and we danced with the Chippendale dancers. You imagine a bunch of young girls expecting to see some hot young guys and 8 old wrestlers come out. Howard Finkel.
Gene Okerlund, Howard Finkel, Pat Patterson.
Yeah. But we had a good time, man. Most of the stuff was backstage, but the last skit was a risky business skit where you had the pink shirt and the tidy whities and the sunglasses. And they said, now this time you go out and you dance with the women and in the crowd. And when you hear the saxophone, that's the cue to come up on stage and do this little skit. So I was drinking heavy back then. But at the end of the show, I'm out and we're dancing with all the women. Now the women are into it, and so they're slapping you on the butt and throwing money. And way in the background, I can hear Piper going, "Hacksaw, Duggan, Duggan." I turn around. They've been playing the sax for about 5 minutes. I was totally oblivious to it out there dancing.
And you were good friends with Piper until that week, right?
Yeah. The first, I think Vince put us together expecting a drama out of it. I really do, because the first 2 or 3 days it was like, yeah, how you doing, brother? I'm doing good. How about you? But then by the end of the thing, I was sitting on his bed, and we're at the edge of his bed telling stories. Yeah, we really hit it off. We became friends. After that, our families became friends. His daughter Ariel is wrestling now.
I met her last weekend down in Florida.
But So who knows? She might get a break. I know that Ronda Rousey deal kind of should have been hers, I thought. That's why I'm not in Stanford, though.
Reason none of us are in Stanford.
You know, Hacksaw, I've always thought that I was really lucky in my career, as Jerry was later in his career, to be part of the Attitude Era. You know, ratings were so high during that era. You're kind of the same because you had the WrestleMania era. You know, people remember eras. You know, they don't remember a lot, maybe of the early 90s, but they remember that WrestleMania era with you and Hogan and Sarge and the Giant and all these
You
crazy
still have 10
characters.
guys,
These great characters, and they remember the Attitude Era. You know, it's just, you look back and think, man, I was lucky to be part of wrestling when it really was a hit. Not that it's not a hit now, but there's different times.
There'd be 100,000 people, but yeah, that was a moment, especially that group. You know, Andre the Giant. I mean, to wrestle Andre the Giant, what a thrill! Of course, back then, if there was a giant in our business, Big John Studd, Yokozuna, Umaga. Like, Duggan, get your 2x4. I had to wrestle every giant there was, you know. But we did the TV show, and Andre's down in the middle of the ring. He goes, "I challenge anyone." Like, Duggan, get your 2x4. So I had my 2x4. I run down to the ring, and I got my chin on Andre's belly. I'm looking up at him like, I'm not afraid of you. And he went to grab me, and when he did, his thumb hit my lip and knocked my lip off. Boom, my lip fell down. And now he's choking me. He got me by the throat, and he's choking me. But it worked out great because blood is just cascading down my chest. It's just pouring. And Andre's got me by the throat. And he's choking me down. He's choking me down. He's choking me down. I feel around. I get to take 2x4. Wham! I hit Andre between the eyes. He goes down like a huge redwood tree. WWF goes off the air. Me standing over Andre the Giant, covered in blood. Ho! Ho! You know?
Wow.
And that was a huge, huge moment in my career, man. And like we were saying earlier, if Andre didn't want to do that, he wouldn't do that. So that was a huge favor he did for me. Of course,
Andre was very select on who he did those favors to.
Very, very select, yeah. And back in he could be a playful giant at times too, you know, especially guys with long hair. He'd punch you and knock you down, and your hair'd lay on either side of the mat. And he'd step on either side, step on your hair, and grab your arms and pick you up. So it's a really unique way to have your hair pulled. Like,
I got to witness him and Art Sheik over in St. Petersburg, Florida, in a match. We were sitting in the dressing room, and he's sitting in between my brother and I, and he elbows us. He said, "You might want to watch this match. I got Sheik." I said, "Oh, good." And nothing else needed to be said. So we all went out there. The back door was sold out. You know, everybody wanted to see what was going on. Poor Sheik, he went from one side of the ring to the other side of the ring with no sorrow at all from Andre.
Yeah, well, he chased Bam Bam out of the ring there. I think it was at the Garden. Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, he's just being heavy-handed. He wasn't really, you know, just. It was a bear, you know, 500 pounds. I mean, that's when I was first wrestling. He knocked me down. Bobby Heenan was managing him, and Bobby's like, "Give him the mudslide, Andre. Give him the mudslide." And I've been wrestling for a while. I've never heard of a mudslide. But then Andre comes, sits on me like a human suppository. I go right up the crack of his ass. So then whenever I'm working, I'm selling, and I hear Heenan go, "Give him the mudslide." I'd roll out of the ring. Oh!
That's great. The only spot Heenan will call.
Mudslide. But Andre, like I said, he knocked the guy with long hair. And but Jake used to come back to the dressing room. His hair would be sticking right up. He go, I hate when he does that. I hate when he does that. And I'm sure you guys probably heard that the famous Japan elevator story. With Andre, you know how it is. You fly all the day, you get over to Japan. It's a long trip. We're staying at the Kyo Plaza, this fancy Dan hotel in Tokyo, and you got to go like to floor 50 and change, go up to another elevator, right? So we get on the elevator. It's me, DiBiase, Jake, and Andre. And just before the elevator's doors close, about 6 or 8 10 Japanese guys all compiling in, because personal space doesn't exist in Japan. So now we're all crowded in the elevator, right? Soon as the elevator starts, Andre does it. He starts his giant laugh. Ho, 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 ho. We're all looking up, and DiBiase like, Andre, why are you laughing? Andre goes, because I'm farting.
Wow.
About then you see the green gas coming up, Me, DiBiase, and Jake are on our toes trying to stay north of it. Those poor Japanese guys are down low. They're really suffering, right? So now we're like 448, 449, and Andre's still laughing. And Jake's like, Andre, why are you still laughing? Andre goes, I'm still farting. Andre's stories, a million of them, man.
That's great. That is
what
great.
a tough life for the guy, though, to be that big, especially back then. Now there's a lot of 7-foot guys, basketball players. But back then, he was 7 foot, 500 pounds. Tough. Imagine trying to get on the bathroom on an airplane.
Yeah, and you can't hide when you're that big. You used to travel with Big Show, or guys who looked completely different. Guys like Stone Cold or The Undertaker or The Rock, they look different than everybody else. You can't hide when you're that big.
Of course, Macho used to wear his gimmick everywhere he went, man. I said Macho, what you saw on TV was pretty way the way Macho Man was. He'd go to McDonald's, he'd be like, "I'll have a milkshake, fries, and a burger." Oh yeah. And I'm like, Mach, turn it down, brother. Turn it. It's way down, hacker. It's way down, brother.
I was sitting by Warrior one time in the airport, and he had a Warrior logo on his jacket. He had a Warrior logo on his Halliburton. He had a Warrior hat on, and he turned to me. He goes, "I don't know why the fans won't leave me alone." I don't either. You're a walking billboard.
I just did the Jericho cruise a couple of weeks ago, man, and I enjoyed being in with the fans, man. I like talking to, and plus, as you know, it's humbling. Not a couple of weeks ago, I was doing an autograph session. I'm sitting there writing, and I look at this guy, 6'5", 290 in line, tatted up, and he's looking at me pretty hard. And he's working his way through the line. I'm checking on my security.
Yeah.
And finally, the guy gets up to me, grabs my hand, squeezes my hand. Hacksaw Duggan, me and my dad, we used to watch it together, and he started crying. I started crying. Everybody started crying. It's humbling, the effect they have on folks. People remember. They bring pictures of their mom. Our whole family sat around the TV and watched TV every Sunday. It was a huge part of so many people's lives.
Yeah, and a big part. My college roommates, who aren't enamored by anybody. I'm on a text with them like everybody is with all their old buddies. And they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I got Hacksaw Jim Duggan on." Every one of them were like, "Oh my God!" They're all ho, and it's cool when you have such an impact on people's lives, like you have, or like Mr. Brisco had.
Yeah, it's amazing just from a television show. It's like I said, it's humbling. It's around the world. You get out of Scotland, get out of the bus. People are off the cab. They're like, "Oh." Of course, this whole kind of works everywhere.
Nothing like hose.
Rick, you see Rick all the time. It's like, "Rick, how's your day?" "Woo." "Rick, what you having for lunch?" "Woo." "Rick, how's your woo?" I'm like, "Rick, are your trunks too tight or what, man?" More like, "Oh."
Well, Hacksaw, I told Mrs. Saul, and I found out that was her name in Arkansas when they told me, Jerry. They said, "You're by Hacksaw and Mrs. Saul are going to be here in a minute." And I said, Mrs. Saul.
Mrs. Saul, yeah, she's like Santa's wife.
That's right.
No, yeah. Well, nowadays, with all the my medication and stuff, Deborah travels with me, keeps an eye on me, and so it makes it fun. We could stop and smell the roses. Actually, we're after WrestleMania in Los Angeles. It's going to be our 34th anniversary. We're going to Tahiti.
Wow, good for you.
Awesome.
Because we're right there in LA, and so we'll something new. So Tahiti, almost 40 years together, 34 married.
Wow, Jim, I follow you on Facebook as a lot of other people, but I see a lot of your posts. It looks like you're really, really enjoying life now, and you and Deborah are out and about everywhere. And everywhere you go, I see people around you. Though that must be exciting as hell.
Yeah, it really is, Jerry. Especially, you know, back in the day, you see the world, but you see the arena, the hotel, and the airport. Nowadays, we're stopping. If we do it like we're doing a Comic-Con, stay a few days. We were up in Alaska, spent a week up there. Just take advantage of all the opportunities that wrestling offers you.
You know, you people said it must be great. You saw the world. Yeah, I saw every major airport in the world. It's great.
Yeah, in the hotel or the arena, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. But it's been a great business, man. It really has. I said you invested in a pair of trunks and. Well, actually, Gary Hart gave me my first trunks and boots, and made a career. 40 plus years later, I'm living a comfortable life. It's been a great business.
Well, where can we find you now? What's going on with Hacksaw Jim Duggan in his career?
Let's see. This weekend I got a virtual. It's amazing how those virtual autograph sessions work. I got a virtual up in Charlotte, and then next week I'm up in West Virginia. But though I got a couple stand-ups coming, then we go to Scotland. But my stand-ups right before WrestleMania will be in Chandler, Arizona, and Las Vegas. And I do a stand-up. A lot of guys do a stand-up, especially like Jake. Mine's family friendly though. You know, I tell stories about traveling with Jake, wrestling Andre, but I keep it family friendly.
You don't tell the elevator story though.
Yeah, I do. That's one of my top ones. Are you kidding?
Well, Hacksaw, thank you so much for joining us. I've been looking forward to this forever. We had a mix-up because I'm the worst booker in the history of the world, and Mr. Brisco didn't do it. So thank you so much.
That's what Mr. Brisco was saying.
I'll second that, John.
He called me, and I answered the phone. He goes, "So you're a dumbass." That's all he said to me. Yes, sir, I am.
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'm glad we finally were able to hook up, because I think the first time that's when I started my health issues. So it took a while, but it worked out. And it was good to see you in Arkansas. It really was.
Oh, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much.
Well,
before we sign off, John and I is going to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Jerry, and you too, buddy. I don't know how often you hold, but you got to give me a hold before we go, guys. Let's go.
All right.
Yeah, everybody should start the day off with a good hold.